Oh, let me see. Let me see how to share screen. Okay, can y'all see the PowerPoint? Yay, that's the first time I've ever done this, so this is something new. So again, my name is Amanda Wendel. I'm in my third year of being a CASA volunteer. And so I wanted just to tell you first a little bit about me. Let me see if I can get here. We go. I was born and raised here in Victoria, Texas, and I was severely abused by my dad and had a lot of neglect with both of my parents, meaning that my mom, just allowed the abuse to happen and just never did anything about it. My parents are, they're middle class, working and known in the community, and so they all still live here. They actually still live in the same home. They're still married, and so that has been a lot of struggle for me throughout my life. I have constantly had to go back into that environment until one day when I had started therapy, and my therapist had said, well, why do you keep going back? And I'm like, I'm just trying to do the right thing. And she said, for whom? And that really kind of struck me like, oh, well, for my kids, just, whatever. And she's like, yeah, but what about for you? And so I ended up having just to set some boundaries and really have gone now through almost 6 years of very extensive therapy, in which I now can talk to both my parents, be in the same, vicinity with my dad. My dad actually just finished therapy with me. I never thought in a million years that that's something that would ever happen. I'm not saying that, life's perfect, that things are going to go to how, a normal family should be, but definitely putting one foot in front of another and just really having a lot of faith in God and just trusting, my therapist, in the process has really made a lot of difference. And so I'm going to kind of talk about some of the things that has helped me as an adult survivor of child abuse as we go along. And one of the really amazing things that happened was I married my husband. I met him when I was 16 years old. I am very blessed to say that I did not fall into the cycle of marrying someone that was, an abuser as well. And so we're still married. We have 3 grown children. Our last one just graduated college and he's also getting married next month. And so they all have their own homes and have great jobs. And so I'm just like I said, I have not fit into that typical mold, but again, I'll talk a little bit more about, why that is, and then also how we can help our CASA kids with that as well, just from my own experience. And of course, I'm a CASA volunteer. And then being a CASA volunteer also led into me becoming founder and president of Pain to Purpose. And how that happened is my very first case, my kids were coming out of emergency shelter out of Corpus Christi, Texas, and I met the CPS worker at the home, and the Suburban was filled full of black trash bags. And I think that broke my heart more than anything, to see all those black trash bags just being unloaded and being dumped into, the home and just stacked in there. And because I know, like, us personally, we have a trash can, but we also sometimes have extra outside trash that goes into those thick trash bags that we'll set outside for the trash. And I was just like, I have to do something. This just isn't okay. And so that's where Pain to Purpose came from. So what I want to do too is I want to talk about some statistics. I think that the statistics are really important. Some of these are old, but I honestly could not find any newer ones. I've had these for a while and went back on their site. But this is a really great organization called Child Help. And you can really find a lot of good information, a lot of help, tools, etc., on there. And so to sit here and to, think that, 3.6 million referrals have been made, to agencies, and, and then also involving more than 6 million, children, um, and, referral can include, yeah, including the multiple children. So we have the worst, record among industrialized nations. And I'm just like, that's appalling to me. But um, and then, of course, the financial impact, and I can also talk about that from a very personal level. The long-term financial impact, it is staggering. Just for the new cases, it says alone lifetime estimates of lost worker productivity, healthcare costs, special education costs, child welfare is over $124 billion, which this could send $1.7 million to children. And so for me, I've been in and out of therapy for, since I was, 21 years old. I got more extensive a few years ago, where I just wanted to dive in and be able to put a lot of this past me, because it has affected my life. I know becoming a cost volunteer, I actually spoke to Diana at the 5K run years ago, but I just said, I'm just not ready. I could not, take on the triggers of another child going through abuse, then would bring up old memories for me and then trigger me. So I couldn't even do the volunteering. But the one thing I could do is I could go do the 5K at that time. And so it was just really important for me to be able to give back and find, a good purpose in what I've been through. And so just alone, thankfully, we do have good insurance, but we still, every single week I'm forking out a copay, to see my therapist. And I know medically, I can say, I've seen in other areas of people that I know, the medical impact that abuse has had is absolutely alarming, from, stomach issues or intestinal type issues, cancer, just being, sick all the time. That abuse really takes a huge toll on the body. And that is one thing I did not want to happen to me. And that was another reason I decided to dive in a lot deeper as an older adult to deal with my issues. And if y'all have questions, don't be afraid to stop and ask me something too. So on this next slide, I wanted to talk, this again talks about the health impacts of child abuse. And I know that this is domestic violence awareness, but domestic violence still includes that child abuse in there. And then it also impacts, a child going forward for the rest of their lives. And so that's why I'm kind of incorporating all of this. And then also the sexual and reproductive health issues and risk factors, multiple sex partners, transmitted diseases, unintended pregnancies, early activity, and pregnancy and fetal death. And this is another statistic that I luckily did not fall into. I'm so thankful for that. When I went to go volunteer first at Midcoast, I just went and volunteered at the shelter there. And I would see the women coming in and out. Just one day, for whatever reason, that really just struck me. And I really broke down one day at home, realizing really and truly how blessed I was that I could be in that exact same shoe, due to the upbringing that I had and what I had to live in. And I want to say that I think a lot of that constitutes, and I would encourage each one of you to talk with your kids about this as well, is find someone that, ask them one, even if it's just one person who really makes an impact, that they're really drawn to, that they like, how they treat them or whatever, because that one person really is going to make a huge difference. I could not tell you when I was a child that information. I never even thought about it until I became an adult and started going through therapy, that I realized when I would question God, where were you, God? How can you allow a soul, a child, to be born into the circumstances like I was born into, as well as, so many children around the world. And I just realized that, one day that God was there all along through the different people that were placed in my life. But like I said, again, I didn't realize that until I became an adult and had gone through therapy. So I'm sharing that because I would like for you each to encourage your own CASA children, or children even in your own lives, to make sure that they, encourage them to verbalize, who is that one person or two people or five people. It could be a teacher, it could be an aunt, an uncle, it could be you. You could be that one person that makes all the difference in the world by bringing out the best in the child. And so being a CASA volunteer is extremely important to me. I don't do it just to do it. I do it because I want to make a difference. I want to be a voice for those children that don't have a voice. I didn't have a voice growing up, but I've realized that I have one now, and I want to teach those children also that they have a voice and it's okay to have one, that it's not that you're seen and not heard kind of deal. And in order to teach them that they have one, then we have to show them that they have one. And by giving them the courage and the strength to have that voice. And one really good way is to help them to find someone in their life that they can mimic, or that they can look up to. And I can, list you several people now, from the time I was born, really throughout my whole life, that actually did have a really huge impact. My aunt and uncle were one in case that they had an amazing family dynamic. And I remember growing up thinking, I wish I could be part of their family, but I actually learned a lot of what I wanted my family to look like by watching how their family was. And I got to spend the night, growing up there, and just learning trying to learn discipline measures, how they talked to their children, how they interacted with their children. And as I got older, I really looked to them to teach me how to parent, because I didn't know how to parent. And another one, I have another aunt by marriage on a different side of the family, that she's such a neat lady. And I would watch her, like, as simple as she and I would go to the store together, because we were having a dinner at our home or her home or whatever, and how she would just speak simply to the checker and to the bagger. I never in a million years ever thought to address either one of them. Hey, thank you so much for all you do, and I hope you have a great day. And give them a smile, and just, they may not be having a good day that day, but I never thought to do that. And it's something that seems, so normal probably to a lot of people. But for me, I would go to the store and I'm just like, wanting to get in and out of there, because I had a lot of anxiety going into large places. That was another thing. Sometimes I had to drop and run being inside of HEB, and that's just not a fun place to be either, just with anxiety. And so, I just kind of I've just learned different tools from different people by learning to watch them. But like I said, that did not dawn on me until the last few years, what an impact that made. And so encouraging our children to do that, I think, is just really vital. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the different types of abuse. And neglect is the largest one. You can see in the darkest blue. And neglect can be that, it could be a child that, basically has to take care of themselves and their siblings, or cook meals, or they're just home alone a lot. Physical abuse then is next, sexual abuse, psychological mistreatment, meaning that, they're using words to manipulate you, like, one of the huge things that I would get told is, well, you don't know what abuse is. And so then, but yeah, I do. Like, but it was just a very huge, toy with words, if you will. And medical neglect means that, if you need medical care due to, an ailment or whatever, you're not getting that. And then I wanted to talk about PTSD a little bit too. I didn't realize that again until I was a much older adult, that is something that I had. I just went into my doctor's office one day. My grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, and my daughter had been in a really bad car accident and had a head injury. And we had been to a neuropsychologist with her and did some testing, and then they were talking about misfiring points in the brain due to the trauma from the car accident. And that really clicked some things in my head to realize that I had a lot of misfiring going on in my head. And I'm putting this in very simple terms and trying not to use medical terms. So I went to my medical doctor, and that is the first time that I ever really sat down and talked to any human being about what had, really happened. And what I was afraid of was that either I was getting an early onset of dementia or Alzheimer's, or I really did have, a traumatic brain injury due to some of the injuries that I had sustained when I was growing up. And so he actually is the first one to say, well, you have PTSD. And he says you have two choices. Either you can continue to live how you're living, or you can go seek, someone to help you to work past it. And at the time I was like, I've lived with this my whole life. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. And then all of a sudden, just one day, I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a better person and be a better me. And so back then, when I first started, doctors that dealt with PTSD, that did EMDR and behavioral health stuff like play therapy and all that, we didn't have that here in Victoria. I had to go to Corpus to do that. So I traveled to Corpus for 3 years. God bless you. Which she was absolutely amazing. She had a lot of credentials, really helped a lot. And one of the huge things that she did with me was called EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And there are several therapists that do that here now. I know they do it at Stitch Ministries. I know they do have and play therapy as well there. I'm sure that there's probably other therapists here, but I do know that Stitch now has that, and it's a free service to the community. So I really try to encourage people to get on the waiting list there.
And sorry, what's that called again?
Are you talking about EMDR?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So essentially what they do, and there's several ways for that to be done. My doctor personally did it with her fingers, and she would do it in this motion. And so what she would do is she would take a slice of the memory and then do that, and then make me blink. And then she would say, okay, well, how do you feel? So then she would also talk about the body. Where was I feeling maybe tightness, or was I having ringing in my ears, or did I feel lightheaded, or am I feeling tension in my shoulder, whatever the case is. And then she would do the same for that. And of course, it took years to get through, most of the memories, and it got worse before it got better, because then in going through that, it would actually bring up things that, I didn't remember. All of a sudden I would have like a memory flood or something like that would all of a sudden just, that would just surface. But I can say that it's worth every ounce of agony that you have to go through with EMDR to overcome any type of trauma. It could be as simple as a dog bite, falling down, seeing something you shouldn't have, whatever the case is. If you have something that constantly replays in your mind, that means your brain has not processed it. And so that's a way of processing a memory. And so what that mimics is REM sleep. So we hear a lot of things about doctors saying, oh, you need to get an X amount of REM sleep. And that's what EMDR is. It takes you it makes your brain kind of do a mimic of REM sleep so that it'll process that memory. And so now I can have a memory of it, but it no longer affects me. Let's see here. And also on this website, they actually do have a little quiz that you can take on there that, that I don't have it on here, but, when you sit there and you think about how many kids, die due to abuse and neglect, I know that I certainly could have been one of those on multiple occasions. And that is kind of one of those memory floods that happened to me at one time, in realizing that that was one of those very unpleasant experiences, but I was able to, she was able to help me to work through that. But to sit there and think of like 1/4 of your child's elementary, class is just like, oh my goodness. I know that that's, heartbreaking for me to think about that, but it's true. I mean, like mine went unreported. I never was, sent to, CPS. I'm certainly one of those kids that probably would have wound up there, but I'm not sure that that was such of a big thing back then. And then going into the behavioral health, which we all deal with our CASA kids, and also with crime too. You go into the prison systems that, even people that are homeless on the streets, and if you talk to them, and just hear their story, a lot of them have been through, some severe child abuse that has landed them there. And again, luckily, I didn't end up in that statistic of, crime related behavioral health. That was different, but, the crime, thankfully, I did not, end up in that. Let's see. So I talked a little bit about the therapies to help with trauma. So one of the really huge things, and I know that none of us are therapists, and a lot of times I'm going to say, we'll leave it up to the therapist, and which is great. But again, you're still a voice to help that child. If you have, a history that you've worked through, it's good to me to let the kids know what you've been through. And of course, on their age level, you don't want to give them too much information or anything like that, but simply tell them, I have been where you're at, and maybe some small, detail, because that'll help the child actually to trust you a lot more. Because most kids are like, well, you have no idea what I'm talking about or what I've been through. I know I've had that same mentality. My situation's different because of this or with that. And, that's just not the case when people are, open and honest and transparent. And I think it's just really important that you share, a little bit of your story with your kids. So I put on here about journaling. This is one thing I did not start right away when I went into therapy, and I really wish I would have done it. My therapist kept encouraging me to do it. And I just, it brings things to life. I now have a journal, I guess, on my computer where I can go in and just kind of type about things. And one day I realized one of my aunts was actually doing some of the traveling with me back and forth to Corpus, because doing EMDR and traveling is probably not good, just in case something, you're not grounded well after the therapy. It's good to have somebody with you. But she just said, you know what, Amanda, you're not angry anymore. And I thought about it, and I thought, I was like, she's right. And so I'm like, now I can kind of kick myself, because I can't, eventually I want to be able to write a book and of course do more public speaking and stuff. And, I no longer can say, well, at this point in my therapy, I noticed a switch, that I went from not being angry anymore to just being indifferent, meaning that I wasn't in a place where I still wanted to be, but thank goodness I wasn't where I was. type of deal. And I wasn't angry. And I just know all of a sudden, yeah, there was a shift. I just wish I would have been documenting all along. But journaling also helps you to put memories on paper and to be able to, or in a computer or whatever, to leave it there. And what I kind of describe to people is like taking your head and you know, pick the lid up and you reach in there, you take the memory out, put it on the computer or put it in the journal, and then you close it, and then that's the new place for it to be. So it actually does help to process trauma by journaling. Walking is another thing. When we take those bilateral steps like this, it actually helps us to process our day if we've had a rough day, or, you know, even going through trauma, you know, or if we're trying to sort things out in our mind and things just seem to be scrambled. Walking is amazing because of that bilateral move. It just helps to process all of that. And the same thing with grounding, getting out in your yard and just walking around barefooted is really good for you too. And of course, like art, you know, we can pour ourselves into doing something art or playing music, you know, something that we really like that, you know, brings a lot of calmness. For me, growing up, it was horseback riding. We had horses growing up, and I would saddle up and I'd go horseback riding. And so that was my calm, you know, when I just felt like I needed a mental break. And you know, bike riding can do the same if you get to go on a long bike ride. I know I did that back in the day when we were allowed to do that in neighborhoods, and it was still safe. And so, and then I did already touch on the EMDR. Does anyone have like any questions for me so far? Okay. And then I want to go to, and this is what I was talking about a while ago, sharing is caring. Don't be ashamed of your story. It will inspire others. And I know for me, you know, getting out and talking about my story has really been tough. One, because, you know, my family all still lives in this community. But in talking with my mom and dad, they both understand now that that is in the past. And what's done is done. We can't go back and we can't undo it, but we can certainly help to impact others and to help them along in their journey. And so, in no means by me sharing my story is, you know, demeaning or dogging on them, but it's, like I said, it's just to help others to know that, hey, you're not alone. And, you know, and certainly with my story, you know, it can be overcome through the right steps and just through, you know, people believing in you, you know, going through extensive therapy and not giving up on that, you know, and finding things that really bring a lot of calm to your life, and just surrounding you by good people, you know, don't be in toxic relationships, you know, set, you know, good boundaries. And so on this next slide, this was a real aha moment for me. I had, which I don't have anymore, but I had a wall in my house that we've since taken down, but I had a really, really large, the love is patient Bible verse on my wall. And I mean, it went almost from, well, a little bit below the ceiling, but almost down to the floor. And it's something I looked at every day. And it was one of those times when I was like really struggling. How do I trust people? How do I know who really loves me, who doesn't? And all of a sudden, I don't know why, out of the thousands of times that I've looked at it, that this finally stood out to me, that I was able to say, oh, here it is in front of me. And I actually created a flyer, and I should have put it on here and I didn't think about it. But what I did is I actually broke the love scripture down, and I went blank is patient, blank is kind, blank does not envy, blank does not boast, blank is not proud, blank is not rude, and just went all the way, you know, through. And I can put my own name in there to make sure that I'm operating in love, but I also can put people in my life's name in there to make sure that they are operating, you know, in love and not operating the opposite. Because if they're, you know, operating where they're being rude or they're being easily angered, you know, they're constantly reminding me of the wrong things that I do, or laughing at me because I mess up at something or whatever the case is. Well, I know that, you know what, that person is not, does not have my best interest at heart, and they really, don't love me. So that's just not a relationship that I need to be a part of. And this has helped me tremendously to learn that, and to help me to be able to set boundaries and to say, okay, this is toxic, so I'm staying away from that. But these people are good and I can learn a lot of things from them. And so even sharing this with your kiddos too, and if what I could do, Morgan, I'm not sure, how could I send the flyer that I have for this that has the blanks? I would have to send it out later because I'll have
If
to
you'll
find
send it to me, I can send it out to everybody.
Okay. And then that way, that's something that y'all can use, with your kids, or even use it just in your own life if you're dealing with any type, especially with the holidays coming up right now. I know that, for me, that's one of the things that I'm expected to be here, I'm expected to be there. And I can now say that, well, no, that's really toxic for me. It's not healthy. And so I choose, not to go there, and it may upset that other person, but that means that they don't love me enough to want the best for me. And so I will definitely send that flyer to you of how I broke that down. So I want to get to pain to purpose. So again, I told you how the idea came about, and that was with my first set of kids. And I wanted to share all the different things that, CASA has really helped me to find my purpose for what I went through as a child, and has played a huge part of my healing. And when I say that, being a voice to a child that does not have a voice has been probably the best reward of them all. Or to see a child light up, or they're happy to see you, or to see, them get, better themselves. Because, and I've been a part of that, has really, helped me to heal. And that is the reason that my organization is named Pain to Purpose, because I wanted to take the pain that I grew up in, and even as an adult, and turn it into a purpose. I wanted to have a reason why I lived through what I did. And so I'm able to understand what a child is going through, or and how it's going to impact them as an adult. I'm able to understand when an adult is going through something, and be able to have empathy and compassion for them, where other people will be like, well, you just need to just get out of that circumstance. Well, it's not that easy. That's where most of the women end up being, their lives being taken by their partner, is by trying to get out, or after that they have left. And so, those fears are real, and they are so manipulated into thinking that they can't do it alone. And that's where the community really has to come into play. And, we, surround those that, are wanting to better themselves, and, for their life. And so with Pain to Purpose, we, in May, I'm going to put the little flyer up here. Oh, I didn't take the, sorry about that. So this is our new flyer that we have out. We started October the 1st, and it is a drive for suitcases, towel sets, toiletry bags, and toiletries according to the ages. And I know that I worked a lot with CASA this last year, because I wanted to make sure that every child got one, no matter their age, or what they've been through. So I made sure that we had something, for each one. And so we've cranked that back up again, now that Belong has taken over the CPS portion of placement. We have now gone from 300 to 800 children to serve. And of course, I would say even beyond that, because I did have other CPS agencies reach out this last time asking if we had any bags left, if we could donate to them, to their counties. And it was like, absolutely. And so we were able to help that. So if we include Belong now, it was closer to 30 counties, if we want to include all of that. And I do have a supplier for the suitcases, a wholesale supplier. We do have someone that is willing to Day One Bags. I'm sure that y'all have heard of them. they're willing to donate our toiletry bags. And then I also do have someone else with United Way that also has some bags to donate to us. I'm not sure how many. And then of course we're going to be doing a drive for all the necessities. So brushes, comb, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, toothpaste, toothbrush, dental floss, feminine products for girls, shaving cream, and razors. I know that CPS is really wanting to go to the creams or whatever that you use to remove the hair, just so that kids aren't cutting. So we're going to also add that into our project. I've priced it and it's really, really expensive. So I'm not sure, we'll do the best we can on that, depending on donations that we get. We have several ways to pay. On the flyer, you'll see we actually have a Facebook page. So please go like it, share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers. And then what we added new just last week is we now have a website. And again, I can type that into the comment section, or you can take a screenshot of the flyer, either way. And share it. So anyway, okay, so that's the end of everything that I have. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm Joy Walker.
Hi, Joy.
Hi, I have a question for you, and I don't know if you have an answer or not, but and depending on the age of the child that we're working with, I give different answers because I don't understand if they're really young. But coming from the background you did, what is an acceptable or maybe a good answer, and everyone would be different, for these children when they ask us why my parent did this to me?
Yeah, that's tough because I still don't have those answers.
Yeah.
I would, I've asked like I said, my dad's just been through therapy with me. And I mean, of course, things didn't go as in depth as I would have liked them to, but the fact that he was willing to show up and, for a few months and, at least go through some of it. But, one of the things that, my dad told me is his own upbringing. He's full-blooded German, and that's the way that the Germans disciplined. And so it's not something that any different that he knew. Now I did challenge him. But did you like it when that happened to you? And he said, well, no, I didn't. And I said, so if you didn't like it then why didn't you make the conscious effort to not do it to me? And all that he could answer me is that he wishes he could go back and do things different and get help.
Yeah.
And so, whether if a child is, in a home where there's, drugs and alcohol, then, and again, it's a very hard thing to wrap your brain around, but it's the drugs and alcohol that's doing it. It's not the person. And that's very hard to differentiate, in a child's mind, because they are still being physically attacked by a human being. So I really, honestly, Joy, I really hate to say that I don't have an answer, but I really don't. I mean, because you're right, it does differ. You could simply say, what, honey, I don't know. And that's a very good question. And when they get into family therapy, maybe encourage them to write that down as one of the therapy questions. I know I have one of my older ones that has family therapy, and that would be a question that they could write down to ask the therapist in front of the parent.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the kids I'm working with now, she's a teenager, and her deal right now is, well, when I turn 18 and get out of here, I'm going to find my mother and beat her up for what she did to me.
Oh,
and I'm
gosh.
thinking, oh, baby, you're doing just what your mother did. I mean,
Yes,
it's,
yeah. But see, she's angry.
Yeah.
And so Is she in therapy?
Oh, yeah, she's been in therapy for years.
But
These kids when they're in the system, they go to therapy all the time, but they get tired of telling their story over and over again. And
you
it
do.
changes. Every time they move, they get a new therapist and they have to start over. So,
Has she been through EMDR? Do you know?
no, I don't think so.
How old is she?
15.
She's old enough.
Yeah.
I would encourage, I mean, I don't know with CASA, do we have, and with CPS, do we have a choice of where the child actually goes to therapy? Can we find a therapist that does EMDR for our kids when they're
We
older?
could ask for it, but most of them, they have therapists that the state contracts with, I gather, and
Well, Stitch Ministries is free of charge.
yeah.
And so if you can get your child on that waiting list with one of the therapists there that does the EMDR, or ask the current therapist. And if they don't, then I definitely would look for someone that does. And if you go on psychologytoday.com, I believe, you can actually search. I mean, you can refine your search by insurance, location, what you're wanting. So like you can actually click on behavioral health, CB, clinical behavioral therapy, I think is what it's called, CBT, and EMDR, and you can actually click those and then do your radius, and it will actually bring up therapists that do what you need. And so when my therapist in Corpus moved away, I had to find a new one. And I understand that, going to a new therapist and being tired of telling your story, and then finding the right therapist that you really can trust. And I actually did find one in all places in Ganado, but she's absolutely amazing. I do art therapy with her, and she also does do EMDR. And I want to say she would maybe even see your 15-year-old. I know if they're just too young, she won't, but that your child may actually be old enough.
Well, and she's not placed in this area, but
okay.
But that is something I can ask her present therapist that she's working with. She's in a residential treatment center now, but I can ask her therapist if she doesn't do that, does she know someone that they contract with that could maybe help with that sort of thing?
Because what happens when you have trauma, there's your frontal cortex, and you have like your hippocampus and all that up here, and that creates that fight, flight, or freeze. And so that's where, like, you have these, you have kids that are, well, I even did it as an adult. I was very quick to like snap off at someone. And so the EMDR will literally calm every bit of that. So I'm no longer the person I used to be, where I would very quickly react to something. I'm a lot calmer now. I can rationally think about something and not just want to and it's just part of me now. And I will tell you that came from the EMDR because of what it does to the brain. She
just got put on probation. And so she's got to be good for a year at least. So, and that might be something that would help if she could get into this type of therapy.
It's not fair to her because she's acting out of, that prefrontal cortex, is everything in there is enlarged, and it's not fair to her because she can't help it. Right. And that's what people don't understand. You can't help it. That trauma has messed with, even with me. I used to be one of those that would pop off, and that's what I'm saying. That's where that crime comes into play, where you get into criminal activity because you're very spontaneous and daring, and and that kind of stuff just drives you. Right. But that EMDR will calm every single bit of that. It is absolutely amazing how well that works.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Sorry about my bird. I forgot to put him up. He's getting a conversation here.
So Amanda, will there be meetings for Paint to Purpose? I know I guess 3 years ago when it started, I was in meetings and then everything kind of came to a halt.
Yeah, no, I have not been doing any of those. I had several, I had several days or weeks in there where I had absolutely no one show up. And so I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to teach, teach on a lesson or get into a weekly, lesson thing that I want to do. When people, are kind of hit and miss, or we have several weeks when no one comes. And because then you're going to want to constantly repeat, you're constantly wanting to repeat the information because the people that come 2 weeks later then didn't get to hear all of that. You know what I mean? And it really made it very difficult. I'm not opposed to starting that again, but I would really need to, have some people that are committed and that would want to show. So I know, like even CPS had talked to me about it at one time about doing something, whether it was weekly or monthly, but that fell through. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not opposed to doing it. I would just need a more, I need something more consistent where I have more people showing up, regularly. Because I have lots to share, I'm saying I've paid for it, so I might as well pass it along and help others with it. So
Thank you.
Anybody
Awesome.
else have any questions?
If y'all think of any later, please feel free to reach out and I can get that to Amanda. And Amanda, go ahead and send that to me as soon as you can, and I'll be able to send that flyer out to all of the volunteers.
Okay. And then can I again try to put, or I may let you try to do it because everything says direct message to me on here for the chat, to put my Facebook page as well as our website, and then also my email. I can try it again and see how it goes.
Here's one.
Oh, good.
Okay, here's my email, but I still think it just went to Morgan though.
If you have the chat box right above it that says "to me," do you have an arrow next to it?
I don't know. Where would I see that?
Right above where you says "type message" here.
Oh, the arrow. Oh, okay, I see.
And then you should be able to.
Oh, to everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Sorry. Okay.
No, you're good.
So let me. I am so sorry about my bird.
I like the bird.
He's a hoot. I've had him for 24 years.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. What kind of bird is he?
He's a Quaker parrot.
Oh,
I agree with Cindy. Your resiliency is amazing. Thank you.
Oh, well, you are so welcome. I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
It's good to hear your story and how you turned what you had into what you're doing now. You're helping so many kids.
Yeah. I want to encourage, even our kids, find something, some avenue to where you can take what you're going through and turn it into something good, because that's the only way I could personally resolve in myself was to go, okay, I went through this for a reason, and I can't help others if I hadn't gone through it myself, because people don't trust you, like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, versus someone that's been through it, they can connect with others. And so it's hard to fathom having to go through it for a reason, but I can also find peace in that too now.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay.
So Amanda's put some links in the chat, and Christy says Al-Anon and Al-Ateen are great resources. So I'd like to share that. Hopefully we can get those investigated too and get some help out there. Does anybody have any more questions for Amanda? Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. I just wanted to let you know that as of now, our next luncheon is going to be virtual as well. So we'll be meeting here, same place, same time, and we can't wait to see you then. If no one has any more questions, thank y'all all for being here, and we'll let you go. Have a great day. Thank
All right,
you.
thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bye-bye.